Sci-fi movies. Oh, we're getting in some good territory now. Sci-fi movies have been one of the biggest genres of films ever. And what better way for a sci-fi movie than, you guessed it, Star Wars! Star Wars is here. May 4th, Star Wars Day. If you can't already tell by my voice, I love Star Wars. Star Wars has been with me since beginning of my childhood till the end. And oh my goodness, is it incredible. Now, because it's only one day instead of Star Wars week, which won't be until the week of Christmas, we're only going to be focusing on the first Star Wars movie. No, I mean like the first episode. Okay, and now you're just being silly. No, I'm talking about episode 4, A New Hope. You see, episode 4 was made in 1977, for those you don't know. Episode 4 was actually the first Star Wars movie that came out. It wasn't episode 1, and it definitely wasn't The Force Awakens, though The Force Awakens and A New Hope are very similar. Some argue that The Force Awakens is just a remake, but I see it a little differently. Anyway, let's talk about A New Hope. So, George Lucas, y'all know who he is, the director of Star Wars, requested Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford to be the trio known as Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and Han Solo. And everyone loved Han Solo. It's a shame that Harrison Ford didn't like Star Wars movies, but that's okay. I guess getting requested to get killed off like 3 times didn't really help out the situation. But anyway, when Star Wars came out, when it first came out, it was just this big event. Everyone went nuts. It was such a big tradition to watch a Star Wars film. The only problem, though, was we had to wait 10, not even 10, like years for Star Wars to come back. After episode 3 came out, we thought Star Wars was done, like gone for good, until The Force Awakens came out. Yes, there are some people who don't like it, but most of the population does like it. When Star Wars first came out in 1977, people were blown away. I mean, blown away by the effects, by the story, by the characters, by the music, by the ending, and by the big shocker of all time. And if you haven't seen Star Wars, I won't give it away. James Earl Jones, oh my goodness. Darth Vader is a big prime example. Darth Vader is one of the biggest and baddest bad guys of all time. He actually would be and should be number 1. He's number 1 on my list, but I don't know about overall. There was also Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I liked Alec Guinness's performance because he was really calm and collective, but very smart and wise. He was a very good, character. Obi-Wan Kenobi is by far my favorite character in the whole Star Wars film. It used to be Anakin as a kid, and then evolved to Mace Windu, but then nowadays, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ewan McGregor returns as the role, and he does a fantastic job. I mean, he was the perfect cast of all time, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. There were 6, 7, 8 movies. 8 movies total for Star Wars, including Rogue One and including The Force Awakens. But without those 2 movies, we just had Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope, which actually wasn't called A New Hope at the time. It was just called Star Wars. And then when number 5, Empire Strikes Back came on, it was re-released as Star Wars, A New Hope. And the last one, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Star Wars has been a great asset through childhood, through generation, All of the movies I like, except for one that might be a little, I actually like all Star Wars movies, but at the same time, there was one that I have to admit was pretty bad. I won't give it away, but that's it. So, with that being said, a big concept like Star Wars, there has to be video games. Yes, video games. Now, of course, you all have seen Star Wars Battlefront 2. Star Wars Battlefront 2, the new one for the Xbox One and the PS4. Star Wars has had multiple video game genres and video game, games, just multiple video games, even a couple for Game Boy, which were pretty good at the time, a couple for Xbox and Xbox 360, there was PlayStation 1, there was GameCube, like Lego Star Wars. Oh my goodness, Lego Star Wars was fantastic. And of course, there was the new show, Star Wars Clone Wars, now known as Star Wars Rebels, which has been turned into also Legos, like Lego Star Wars 3. So with that concept being said, there was one game that came out before all the other games. The Atari 2600 version. Yes, and we all know the infamous commercial with that guy that came on with the Atari 2600 commercial and then his mouth opened wide open and blew up, but then all of a sudden he had the frizzy hair. Let's play that commercial for a second.
Whoa! TIE fighters! Fireballs! Coming right at me! Watch the laser towers! Aim for the tops! Pick on the cannons! Use the force! They're coming too fast! Which way? Which way? My shields are gone! Alright! I'm going in!
Went out like he was supposed to went out. Like a true psychopath. Or a true G-ster. But after those 3 Star Wars games, there was one game that everyone would talk about. No, not Empire Strikes Back, but of course, Star Wars for the Nintendo Entertainment System, the classic 8-bit NES. Now, a lot of people say that Star Wars was very difficult and it wasn't really good. It had a lot of problems. Well, I've actually played Star Wars before, and it wasn't that bad when I first played it, but that was a long time ago. So with that being said, let's play Star Wars for the Nintendo Entertainment System. So this is Star Wars for the Nintendo Entertainment System. One thing you'll realize is that JVC was the one who made this game, and that's crazy because LJN was the one who made all these movie adaptation NES games. And that's a good sign because JVC has made some decent NES games. The crawl's there, the music's there, so let's get started. It starts off with a pretty lousy driving stage. I wish it was as simple as you can point to the direction you want to go with your controller, but it sort of has to have that opposite reverse control. And with my joystick, it's harder than it looks. It's also similar to how it starts you out in Legend of Zelda, where it just puts you in a spot and you just go wherever you want to go. The game never really hints or tells you where you're supposed to go first. You can spend for hours trying to search for where you're supposed to go, and then all of a sudden end in a random cave and realize you went to the wrong place. With this game, it's a lot more open, and most of the terrain looks exactly the same as in the background. When you finally go to a level that you want, you're able to maneuver a little bit better, therefore turning into a side-scroller, the great classic ways of the old NES. But then, the game decides to turn into a maze, and more times than not, you'll get lost, trying to figure out what to do next. So I go to a cave encountering some of the toughest enemies. I mean, good lord. Most of the enemies just take a ton of health, and you think because you have a health bar, things will be easier. Absolutely not. My problem isn't so much the enemies, but the level design. The level design is just atrocious. I think I've died with the levels themselves rather than just hitting enemies. Like this one bug. Look at this. Oh my gosh. Really? Really? Oh my gosh. Wait a minute. What? Are you kidding me? There's falling damage in this game? For an action platformer game like Star Wars, you have falling damage? Are you serious? So not only do I have to worry about the level design or the enemies, I have to worry about falling too great a height, because it can either hurt you or kill you. Oh my gosh! And you know what's the worst part about this? I figured out that I went to the wrong place. I have to get the lightsaber first, by Obi-Wan. Where do I find Obi-Wan? Some random cave. Okay, JVC. First of all, R2-D2 was obtained first by Luke, then he was found by Obi-Wan, and then he got his lightsaber. So to make me think that you guys were following the movie and then throw me a curveball and realize that you weren't, it's just total garbage. Alright, so believe it or not, the first cave I went to as soon as I found out that you had to go to Obi-Wan first was the exact cave that Obi-Wan was in. I managed to find Obi-Wan and get the lightsaber, which is by far my favorite weapon of all time. It is overpowered in movies, and it is especially OP in the games. I thought this game did a great job realizing the power of the lightsaber. It demolishes enemies in one hit, and you'll just have a blast using it. My only problem with it though is that it doesn't really deflect bullets like it does in the movies. The stage where R2-D2 is at is a very confusing stage. But at least in this case you have the lightsaber, so it makes this stage a little easier. So then after that, once again, you have to figure out where you're supposed to go next. The game never hints at you or tells you anything, giving you any clue where to go next. Not only wasting more time trying to figure out which location is the right one, but also wasting your health, causing you to get multiple game overs and using up multiple continues. You get 10 continues, by the way.
not unlimited continues, 10. And seeing that this game handicaps you so much, one, by there being no guide at all, is a very big problem.
I guess they were trying to go for this big action adventure game, but the big worlds kind of make it hard to navigate where you're supposed to go. This wasn't that common. Like Wizards and Warriors in Final Fantasy, when you have big worlds, they're hard to track. Especially in Legend of Zelda, they had this problem. Because in Legend of Zelda, you sort of need a guide or a map to get through the whole game. Same thing with Star Wars, but Star Wars doesn't have a map. That's not what they were going for. I wonder what else they can come up with. We haven't gotten to the Death Star or any other infamous scenes from the first movie. Episode 4, not Episode 1. We've gotten through, the big, lightsaber and everything else, but let's see how else it goes.
So then you realize that they decide to follow the movie again, and you go into the Cantina Bar, where you meet Han Solo. Another thing that I like about this game is the cutscenes. When characters interact with each other, it looks pretty good, and just like in the movies, it's very memorable and very fun. And as an added bonus, you get to play as Han Solo, whose blaster is much better than Luke's, and also has a better jumping ability. But that's kinda odd. Han Solo isn't even close to being a Jedi, but he gets a higher jumping range than Luke? That's strange. I still prefer to be Luke though. Why? Because he has the lightsaber. The last two stages aren't that bad. You have a very confusing maze, which is the Death Star. I wonder how the stormtroopers get by with there being so many doors and puzzles. You also get to play as Leia, who not only jumped higher than Han Solo, but also jumped higher than Luke. Yeah, girl power. Rest in peace, Carrie Fisher. And finally, the famous space battle, the Death Star, where you fight the Empire, you blow up their big spaceship, and you go in the throne room and end up having a great, successful Star Wars game. More like a hard, difficult mess. It has a lot of replayability, but at the same time, it has a lot of problems.
Well, there you have it. Episode 4 in Star Wars is a pretty good game. Hard, very difficult to navigate, but a very good game. Overall, it wasn't really that bad. In the end, Star Wars has been there from generations to generations, and it still will keep going. We all have seen The Last Jedi. I love the trailer. I can't wait to see what they come up with for this next movie. And at the end of the day, it was all a good game. I can't wait for Star Wars Week because then I get to do multiple videos instead of just one video. I'm Dunny Bryan. I'll see you next time on Historics. And may the 4th be with you.